first laugh hit me before I even set foot inside the barracks. "Who let the city girl in?" one of them whispered loud enough for half the platoon to hear. Boots clicked against the concrete floor as eyes turned, smirks curling like shadows across faces I didn't know. Drill Sergeant Miller barked from across the room, "Harper, step forward." My stomach sank. I had heard the rumors, soft, weak, can't handle basic, but hearing them shouted, amplified, made it real. I swallowed, keeping my chin high, letting the world judge without a word. A few recruits snickered, tossing comments back and forth like grenades aimed at my dignity. Jackson, a quiet private I barely knew, watched from the side, his expression tight. He didn't intervene. He never did. But I could feel his eyes, a steady line of quiet sympathy. I stepped forward, hands at my sides, trying to appear smaller than I felt. Drill Sergeant Miller circled, eyes sharp as a hawk. "You think you belong here, Harper? Think again." Every word was a hammer against my confidence. He slammed a clipboard onto the table, echoing like gunfire in the empty barracks. I felt heat creeping up my neck, but kept my mouth shut. Silence was my shield. The barracks were filled with noise, shouts, folding cots, the scrape of metal lockers. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat. The other recruits leaned in, ready to pounce. "Watch her trip over her own boot," one muttered. Another added, "City girl's gonna choke on the obstacle course." I let their words wash over me. Every insult, every cruel smirk, every whispered prediction of my failure became something I could carry, like a pack that wasn't mine but had to be worn. During morning PT, it only got worse. Running laps under the early sun, the other recruits kept pace effortlessly. My lungs burned, my calves screamed, and still, I forced my legs forward. Drill Sergeant Miller barked corrections that felt like personal attacks. "Form! Discipline! What are you even doing, Harper?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. Each order was another layer of the wall I had to climb, a reminder of everything I wasn't supposed to be. But I kept moving. Small steps, one after another, hiding the tremor in my fingers and the doubt in my chest. Mealtime in the chow hall was no better. Trays clattered as laughter bounced off the walls. One of the top recruits, Riley, shoved his tray near mine, spilling a little milk over my boots. The table erupted in quiet chuckles. I knelt, cleaned it quickly, and rose without a word. No one offered help. No one asked if I was okay. I caught Jackson's eyes across the room. He nodded almost imperceptibly. That nod was a lifeline, a silent reminder that not everyone had given up on me, even if I hadn't earned it yet. Inspection came next. Boots aligned, beds tucked, uniforms crisp. I stood stiffly, my gear not perfect but serviceable. Drill Sergeant Miller's gaze scanned the room like a predator. "Harper, what is this? Sloppy, lazy, unacceptable." A chorus of murmurs rose behind him. I clenched my fists at my sides, but I didn't flinch. I held my posture, shoulders back, because flinching would have been giving them what they wanted, proof that I didn't belong. I thought that was the end of it, but the day dragged on with whispers and pointed looks. During downtime, some recruits tossed nicknames my way: City Slicker, Coffee Shop Private, Soft Hands. Every word stung, but I carried it silently, learning to bend without breaking. I studied drills I hadn't mastered yet, reading manuals under the dim light of my bunk, tracing diagrams with my finger, practicing movements no one noticed. Every repetition was a promise to myself that this wouldn't be my defeat. And then there was a small moment, a tiny crack in the world of mockery. Jackson left a water bottle at my bunk, nothing more than that, but enough. Enough to say, "I see you." It was a whisper of solidarity that grounded me, a reminder that even in the harshest environments, some honor the effort, the discipline, and the grit it takes to survive. By nightfall, my body ached and my pride was battered. But I wasn't defeated. I lay on my cot staring at the ceiling, replaying every insult, every shove, every laugh. And somewhere deep inside, a spark ignited, a thought that wouldn't go away. What if all this, every taunt, every challenge, was just preparation? Preparation for something no one else could see yet. I didn't know what the next day would bring. I didn't know if I'd survive the next drill, the next inspection, the next whispered judgment. But one thing was clear. I wouldn't crumble. Not yet. Not ever. And maybe, just maybe, they hadn't seen the real Harper yet. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Days passed in a blur of drills, early mornings, and endless repetition. Each sunrise hit me like a hammer, against my resolve, but I refused to let it break me. I was slower in some exercises, weaker in others, but I pushed over and over until my muscles screamed and my lungs burned. Drill Sergeant Miller didn't miss a chance to remind me. "Harper, what is that? You call that form?" His voice cut through the morning fog as if it could slice bone. Laughter bubbled quietly from the group of recruits who'd been waiting for any sign of weakness. I swallowed, adjusted my stance, and tried again. Every correction he barked felt like an accusation. Every grunt from the recruits felt like another weight on my shoulders. During obstacle courses, I stumbled more times than I could count. My boots slipped in the mud. My fingers grazed the rough surfaces, and every slip was accompanied by a chuckle or whispered insult. Riley, the one who seemed to thrive on picking apart anyone who struggled, kept up a running commentary. "Careful, city girl. Don't want to sprain your ego too." The words were sharp, precise, designed to sting. I kept my eyes forward, hands steady, silently counting steps, memorizing patterns. Jackson was there, always at the edge of the field, never speaking, never stepping in. But his eyes met mine once in a while, and that small gesture felt like a lifeline. Chow Hall was no relief. The line moved fast, trays clattering, silverware clanging. Recruits pushed ahead, elbowing, shoving, whispering jokes at my expense. Riley's friends piled onto me, making sly remarks about my small tray, the way I carried it, even the way I chewed. I wanted to snap back, but every word I swallowed became fuel. I let them think they'd won. Behind my silence, I was calculating, remembering, preparing. Each slight, each smirk, each whispered joke, I stored. Nights were the hardest. When the barracks went quiet, I stayed awake, reviewing everything from the day. Movements, commands, drills, even the subtle cues in Riley's stance and the group's patterns. I repeated exercises quietly until my body ached with muscle memory and my mind became a weapon. My bunk felt small, my cot stiff, but it became my training ground, a secret place where no one could touch my determination. I thought about quitting often, but that thought never stayed long, not when every failure was just a step closer to proving myself. Then came the stormy morning. Heavy rain soaked the training field, mud up to our ankles, thunder grumbling above. Drill Sergeant Miller's voice cut across him, the field sharp as lightning. "Today's endurance test isn't for the weak. Move!" The obstacle course was brutal, slippery ropes, mud pits, walls to climb. Riley laughed, shoving his buddy ahead, mocking every hesitant step I took. "City girl's gonna drown in the mud," they jeered in unison, sure that my time would embarrass me further. My fingers clutched the rope, soaked and aching, but I didn't let go. Step by step, inch by inch, I moved forward. Halfway through, disaster struck. A junior recruit slipped on the mud near the climbing wall, twisting his ankle. Panic spread through the group. Some froze, others laughed nervously. Drill Sergeant Miller barked commands, but the chaos made no sense. I didn't stop. I sprinted across the mud, grabbed his arm, and helped him back to a safer spot. My hands were soaked, my uniform heavy with mud, but the grateful look in his eyes was worth every ache. Jackson's gaze followed silently, nodding once, small but proud. Riley's jaw dropped, the smirk gone, replaced by uncertainty. By the final stretch, exhaustion had settled into every muscle. My boots were caked, uniform shredded at the elbows, and I could barely lift my legs. Riley tried one last taunt. "Careful, Harper. Don't sprain your face falling flat." I ignored him, focused only on the finish line. And then it happened. I surged forward, finding a rhythm I didn't know I had. Muscles burning with controlled fury. Heart pounding in triumph. I crossed the line first. Silence fell. Every eye turned toward me, mouths opening and closing, disbelief painted on faces. Riley's face went pale. He stumbled back as if I'd knocked the air out of him. Drill Sergeant Miller stopped pacing, his sharp gaze assessing me with something unspoken. Shock, maybe respect. For a moment, time hung suspended. The recruits who had mocked me, laughed at me, pushed me down in every way they could, were frozen. They didn't know what to say. Every insult, every doubt, every whispered prediction of failure had evaporated in that single moment. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply stood there, drenched, exhausted and steady. The storm raged around us, but inside, I felt a quiet victory, the kind that builds in silence, uncelebrated by the world but burning fiercely within. Drill Sergeant Miller finally barked, a low rumble this time, not mocking but measured. "Harper, you set the standard today. Don't make me regret noticing." That was all, just enough to make the others whisper and shift uncomfortably, realizing the balance of power had changed. Riley didn't speak, just stared at me, his arrogance shattered. Jackson's small nod from the sidelines felt like the loudest applause I'd ever received. By the time we returned to the barracks, the atmosphere was different. The whispers that had once mocked me now contained hesitation. The same people who had laughed at every step now looked at me with a mix of disbelief and caution. I cleaned up quietly, ignoring the lingering stares, letting my silence speak volumes. I could feel the shift, the subtle recalibration of respect and fear. Not everyone had changed, but the foundation of perception had cracked. That night, lying on my bunk, soaked clothes hung to dry, I thought about everything that had happened. The mockery, the pain, the exhaustion, the triumph. I realized something important. It wasn't just about finishing first, or beating Riley, or earning Drill Sergeant Miller's acknowledgement. It was about proving to myself that I could endure, adapt, and rise. Every moment of humiliation, every whispered doubt had fueled this surge. And I knew deep inside that this was only the beginning. What came next would test me further, in ways I hadn't imagined. But for the first time, I was ready. And I knew one thing for certain. When the real challenge came, they wouldn't see it coming. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning started like any other, heavy fog rolling across the training grounds, the smell of wet earth mixing with sweat and diesel from the vehicles lined up at the edge of the base. Drill Sergeant Miller's voice cut through the mist, sharp and relentless. "Today, Harper, you're on the lead squad. Don't screw this up." The words stung, echoing in my ears because the implication was clear. One mistake, and the humiliation would be worse than before. I nodded, keeping my jaw tight, boots sinking into the damp soil, as the other recruits muttered under their breath, some trying to hide smirks, others shifting nervously. Riley leaned in, his voice dripping with mockery. "Lead? Ha! More like last to fall. Don't trip over your own ego this time." The mission was simple in theory, a time simulation through rugged terrain with an unexpected obstacle course, complete with simulated enemy engagement, communication breakdowns, and physical traps. But as we set out, the truth became clear. This was no ordinary drill. It was designed to test endurance, decision-making under fire, and above all, character. From the beginning, equipment failed. Radios died mid-transmission, GPS units flickered, and the wet conditions made every step treacherous. Panic bubbled in some recruits. Fear flashed across faces I had once been afraid of myself. But I focused, scanning the field, mapping the terrain in my head, calculating the safest routes while keeping the squad moving. Halfway through, chaos erupted. One of the recruits, Thompson, slipped on a slick rock and fell into a shallow stream, twisting his ankle badly. Riley froze, unsure whether to help or keep moving, and some of the others panicked, calling out in frustration. Drill Sergeant Miller's voice thundered through the comms, cutting through the noise. "Decision-making! What are you waiting for? Harper, take lead!" My pulse jumped. This was the moment every second of training had been preparing me for. Without hesitation, I sprinted to Thompson, bracing him against my shoulder and guiding him back to firmer ground. Mud soaked through my uniform. Water ran down my neck, but I ignored it. Every grunt, every slip, every ache was fuel. Jackson appeared beside me, offering an extra strap for Thompson's pack and a steadying hand. He didn't speak, though didn't cheer, just moved as needed, silent but indispensable. The squad's dynamics began to shift. Riley's smirk faltered, replaced by unease. He barked orders that made no sense, trying to regain control, but his confidence had been undermined by his hesitation and the clarity of my actions. "Harper, you think you know better than me?" he shouted, frustration shaking his voice. I didn't answer. I kept moving, guiding the team through the mud, over fallen logs, past concealed traps, all while ensuring Thompson didn't collapse. The rain pounded, turning everything slippery and dangerous. Every step was a test, every decision a tightrope walk over chaos. Then came the unexpected twist, a collapsed bridge over a fast-moving creek. Our only route forward was unstable, rotted wood and slick moss, making each step lethal. Panic rippled through the squad. Riley froze, stammering orders that made no sense. "Go! Wait! We can't!" Others hesitated, some inches from disaster. My heart pounded, chest burning, but I spotted a path. I instructed Thompson to hold tight, directed 2 recruits to stabilize a rope line, and led the crossing myself. One misstep, and we could all fall. Sweat and mud coated my hands, fingers raw, boots slippery as I moved carefully yet decisively. The squad followed, trembling but trusting my lead. Jackson stayed at the end, ensuring no one slipped, his silent support anchoring the group. By the time we reached the final checkpoint, drenched, exhausted, and barely able to stand, Drill Sergeant Miller's voice cut through the storm. "Everyone, drop your packs, now!" The recruits obeyed, some laughing nervously, others trembling with fatigue. And then it happened, the moment that would etch itself into every eye present. A simulated ambush was revealed. A group of masked instructors charged. Weapons at the ready. The squad panicked. Riley froze as if rooted to the mud, shouting confused commands. The others scattered. I didn't. I assessed, grabbed Thompson, moved him behind cover, and coordinated countermeasures with what little radio remained. The squad followed, some reluctantly, others in awe. My direction kept them alive, moving, breathing, adapting. Drill Sergeant Miller appeared from the mist, a faint smile under his stern expression. "Harper, you took control. You kept the squad alive when everything fell apart. Not just your physical endurance, but your mind, your discipline under chaos. That's leadership. That's what separates the weak from the strong." Riley's face went pale. The arrogance he had worn like armor crumbled completely. The recruits who had mocked me, whispered jokes, and doubted my every move, now looked at me with a mix of disbelief, fear, and respect. I stood there drenched, exhausted, mud-covered, and utterly vindicated. Jackson stepped beside me silently, hand resting briefly on my shoulder. A small gesture, but one that felt like the loudest cheer I could imagine. The squad members who had laughed at me now whispered apologies, half-hearted but genuine in their shock at the reversal of power. Riley muttered something incoherent, his bravado gone, his confidence shattered. I didn't respond. I let the silence speak, the quiet weight of victory heavier than any shout of triumph. Later, back at the barracks, the transformation was undeniable. Words of mockery had faded. Hesitation and newfound respect replaced them. Riley avoided my gaze as if the previous hierarchy had been erased, replaced by a meritocracy I had earned. Drill Sergeant Miller's presence was a constant reminder that performance, not prejudice, determined respect. In the mess hall, some of the same recruits who had sneered now offered small acknowledgments, nods, or a quiet, "Good work, Harper." Each one felt like a drop of redemption, slowly filling the space left by weeks of humiliation. That night, as I lay on my bunk, mud still crusted on my sleeves, boots drying by the heater, I replayed the day's events. Every insult, every stumble, every whispered doubt had been a rehearsal for this exact moment. Every silent nod from Jackson, every quick decision under pressure, every controlled movement in chaos, it all led here. And I realized something profound. Strength isn't always loud, and respect isn't given. It's earned through endurance, courage, and integrity when no one else believes you can survive. The storm outside had passed, leaving a cold, clean quiet over the base. And in that quiet, I felt something shift inside me. A readiness, a hunger for the next challenge, whatever it might be. I had faced humiliation, doubt, and chaos, and emerged not just unbroken, but transformed. The others had seen me finally, and what they saw wasn't the weak, timid recruit they had mocked. They saw someone who could lead, adapt, and endure anything. And deep down, I knew the real tests were still ahead. Not every mission, not every challenge would be this straightforward. But now I had proof, not just to them, but to myself, that I could rise above, that I could turn every ounce of ridicule, every whisper of doubt, into fuel. I had flipped the script entirely, and nothing would ever be the same. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The following morning, the barracks felt different. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles reflecting the pale sunlight, and yet the air seemed heavier, charged with the memory of yesterday's chaos. I walked down the narrow aisle between the bunks, boots scuffing lightly on the polished floor. Whispers followed me, soft, hesitant, respectful. Some recruits avoided my gaze while others stole quick, incredulous glances. Riley lingered near the mess hall door, jaw tight, hands clenching and unclenching, as if trying to process the shift in power. Drill Sergeant Miller's voice boomed unexpectedly, slicing through the murmurs. "Formation, now! And Harper, bring the squad!" I obeyed, masking fatigue with discipline. The recruits lined up like statues, eyes forward, shoulders squared. The silence was tense, anticipatory. Everyone knew something had changed, though no one wanted to acknowledge it out loud. Even Riley's usual arrogance had cracked, replaced by a restless unease. Jackson stood a few ranks behind, silent as always, but his steady presence offered reassurance, a quiet reminder that I wasn't alone, even if I carried the weight of yesterday's triumph. The morning exercise was brutal. Obstacle courses, timed runs, and a precision drill that left the squad sweating and gasping for air. Every movement demanded attention, every misstep punished by shouted commands or the sharp correction of Miller's whistle. Yet despite the grueling pace, a subtle shift occurred. My directions were followed without question, my decisions trusted, and even Riley reluctantly complied. A part of me felt vindicated, but another part remained wary. Respect earned in the heat of chaos is fragile, easily shattered by ego or fear. Lunch brought a quieter tension. The mess hall was abuzz with chatter, but I could feel eyes on me at every turn. Riley muttered under his breath, barely audible. "She thinks she's in charge now?" But his words carried no threat, only disbelief. Jackson sat silently across from me, passing a water bottle without a word, his presence both grounding and protective. Other recruits, once quick to mock, now offered cautious smiles, a silent acknowledgement of the shift that had occurred. Each nod, each small gesture, reinforced what I already knew. Yesterday had changed everything, but the real test came that afternoon. Miller announced a field evaluation, a complex simulation designed to assess leadership under unexpected pressure. The squad would face split objectives, limited communication, and the looming threat of failure. Failure that could cost both mission success and squad cohesion. "Harper, you're in charge," Miller said, voice low but firm. "Show me what you learned yesterday." I swallowed, chest tight, mind racing. This wasn't just about proving myself to the squad. It was about proving it to myself, about solidifying the transformation I had fought for in silence. The field exercise was chaos incarnate. Communications dropped, vehicles stalled, and terrain that had seemed familiar morphed into a minefield of obstacles. Riley faltered immediately, barking orders that conflicted with the needs of the squad, putting everyone at risk. Sweat stung my eyes as I overrode his missteps, taking control, recalibrating strategies on the fly. Thompson, still nursing his ankle from the previous day, trusted me fully, moving without hesitation when I gave direction. Jackson anticipated every need, silently correcting errors and stabilizing morale. Then the climactic moment, a sudden flare simulation erupted on the hillside, signaling an enemy ambush. Recruits scattered instinctively, panic flaring in some, hesitation freezing others. Riley froze completely, a deer in the headlights, muttering commands that went unheeded. I moved decisively, guiding the squad into cover, redistributing roles, and orchestrating a countermove that none of them expected. Every calculated decision, every order, every moment of courage from my side became the pivot point. The squad survived, succeeded, and emerged not just intact but unified, with their respect for me absolute and unspoken. When the simulation ended, silence hung thick in the air. Miller approached, boots crunching on gravel, gaze sharp. Harper, you not only led, you saved lives, maintained order, and proved leadership isn't about ego. It's about courage, clarity, and commitment. Some of these recruits thought yesterday was luck. Today proved its skill. Riley's face was a portrait of shock and reluctant admiration, jaw tight, fists clenched. The same recruits, who had mocked me now, looked uncertain of how to interact with a woman who had survived every challenge and held her head high. Back at the barracks, the aftermath was subtle but profound. Riley avoided my eyes, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a wary silence. Jackson handed me a towel without a word, his nod as much congratulations as reassurance. Quietly, a few recruits approached, murmuring small acknowledgments, tentative gestures of respect that mattered more than any loud applause. And I realized that real power wasn't about being loud. It was about holding steady when chaos reigned, about guiding others without expectation of reward, and about proving character through actions rather than words. That night, as I cleaned my gear and lined my boots for inspection, I replayed the day. Every hesitation from Riley, every grunt from the squad, every silent nod from Jackson built a mosaic of recognition and validation. The transformation wasn't complete. Challenges would come, and the squad's dynamics would continue to test me. But for the first time, the scales had shifted. I had endured humiliation, proven resilience, and now commanded respect not through intimidation, but through unwavering action and integrity. Outside, the stars shone over the base, cold and clear. The weight of yesterday's struggle had settled into a quiet pride, a reassurance that every step, every decision, and every moment of perseverance mattered. I had become someone they couldn't underestimate, and that knowledge was both empowering and humbling. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the silence of the night carry away doubt, replacing it with a resolve stronger than anything Riley or anyone else could throw at me. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new obstacles, and perhaps new attempts at ridicule. But for now, the squad had seen the truth. Leadership is earned, resilience is proven under pressure, and those who try to break you often end up revealing their own weakness. And I was ready. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning air was sharp, crisp against my face as I stepped onto the parade grounds. The sun had just crested the horizon, throwing long shadows across the neatly lined rows of recruits, their boots polished and jackets pressed to perfection. Silence hung over the formation, the kind that carries both anticipation and respect. I felt it too, the culmination of weeks of struggle, ridicule, and relentless testing. And yet, the pride beneath my ribs made every step lighter. Drill Sergeant Miller walked the line, eyes scanning, sharp as ever. He stopped in front of me, paused just long enough to make me wonder if he'd finally offer a word of praise or throw another jab. Then he simply nodded, a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture that carried more weight than any speech. Behind me, the squad shifted slightly, tension mingling with awe. Even Riley, whose sneers had once cut through my confidence, avoided my gaze, his chest tight, jaw clenched, but respect, silent, begrudging, creeping into his posture. The ceremony began. Flags fluttered in the gentle wind as the unit prepared for the traditional salute. I stepped forward when called, boots hitting the ground in precise cadence, my heart steady even as adrenaline thrummed beneath my skin. Jackson fell into step beside me, no words exchanged, but his presence grounding me, a reminder that silent allies often matter more than the loudest cheer. As the first salute was rendered, I caught the glint of pride. In the eyes of those who had once mocked me, faces that had twisted with scorn, that had whispered and laughed behind my back, now reflected uncertainty and a dawning respect. There was no applause, no fanfare, just the raw acknowledgement that something had shifted. I had endured, and endurance is its own kind of victory. Later, back in the barracks, the squad gathered for chow. Conversations were tentative, polite, tinged with curiosity rather than derision. Riley, usually the first to dominate the table, hesitated, then muttered almost to himself, "Didn't think she had it in her." A small laugh from Thompson followed, not mocking, but approving. Even the new recruits, eyes wide and uncertain, looked to me as if for guidance. It was subtle, but it carried the quiet thrill of validation. Miller approached once more, clipboard in hand, surveying the unit. He stopped near me and placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. "Leadership," he said, voice low but clear, "isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about seeing what needs to be done, stepping up when no one expects it, and holding steady when everyone else falters. You've done that. Today proves it." The weight of his words sank in, not as a reward, but as a recognition of the journey, the humiliation endured, the effort invisible to most, and the quiet resilience that had changed everything. The final twist came as the squad lined up for dismissal. Riley, finally meeting my eyes, spoke without hesitation, voice steadier than I had ever heard. "Good job today. You earned it." It was brief, but it landed like a verdict, and the relief and pride that flooded through me were undeniable. Even those who had stayed silent through the struggle, Jackson, Thompson, offered nods, small gestures, but profound in their honesty. Brotherhood, it seemed, could be claimed not through volume, but through respect. That night I sat alone outside the barracks, boots off, gear laid neatly beside me. The stars reflected off the calm surfaces of puddles from an earlier rain. I thought back to every insult, every sneer, every doubt cast upon me, and I smiled quietly, not with arrogance, but with the deep, unshakable pride of someone who had endured, adapted, and emerged stronger. The journey hadn't ended. It never truly ends. But the foundations had been laid. I had proven my strength, and the echoes of yesterday's ridicule now felt distant, almost irrelevant. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The sun dipped low over the base, casting long shadows across the parade grounds. I stood beneath the fluttering American flag, chest rising and falling with steady breath. Around me, my fellow soldiers formed a silent semicircle, rifles at port arms, eyes fixed, respect evident in every measured movement. Drill Sergeant Miller approached, his usual stern face softened by a single, deliberate nod. No words were needed. The wind tugged at the edges of the flag, carrying a quiet weight, and in that stillness, the journey, the humiliation, the relentless trials, the small victories, settled like a stone in my chest. Looking around, I realized the barracks, the drills, the mess hall whispers, and the late-night training sessions had all led to this moment. What had once felt like punishment and prejudice had been transformed into resilience and quiet authority. I had stood through the storm, endured the sneers, and earned the trust of those who doubted me most. As the flag rippled overhead, I understood something deeper. Dignity isn't given. It's claimed in silence, sweat, and unwavering resolve. Actions speak louder than words. In reflecting on this journey, I see a broader truth for all who wear the uniform or live by its values. Injustice may be cruel, but it can forge character. Prejudice can wound, yet it can also reveal inner strength. Brotherhood is often hidden in quiet gestures rather than loud praise, and respect once earned resonates longer than any insult. You reap what you sow. Every effort, every choice, every moment of courage builds a foundation stronger than any mockery or fear. If this story speaks to you, share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let us know how resilience, honor, or brotherhood has shaped your journey. Don't forget to like the video to support stories that matter, and subscribe for more reflections on courage and humanity. Remember, even in silence, the spirit of a soldier carries on, steady as the flag overhead, unbroken and proud.